Hey Rob, how much does build spec matter?
It's a question that we get asked a lot here at the Loam Wolf, but we rarely have the opportunity to put two of the same bikes head to head with different specs. So for this dissected feature, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking two Trail 429s by Pivot and putting them head to head with a Enduro and a Trail build to see exactly what the difference is. So let's find out.
Ready up like sandwich. Are you okay? Working on my hand trick for your host sake.
Let's try that again.
The Pivot Trail 429 was an easy choice for this feature, thanks to its versatile nature that blends XC race inspiration with enough capability to hand some more rough and technical trails. The Trail 429 frame is built with high quality carbon fibre materials and uses Pivot's hollow core technology to bring an overall frame weight, including a shock for a size medium, at just 5.9 pounds. That means Pivot is able to get full build weights down to just 26.5 pounds, which is pretty damn impressive for a 29er mountain bike. Pivot's carbon frame features size-specific ride tuning, meaning that every rider from extra small to extra large gets the same kind of feeling out on the trail. This is not a cheap exercise to do, so it really shows Pivot's commitment to quality and delivering the highest performance out there. Pivot selected the geometry on the Trail 429 to deliver XC race-worthy agility, but still packing enough versatility and capability to handle some more rough and technical trails. They offer a flip chip which goes between a low and a lower position, offering you 7mm bottom bracket height adjustment and a half a degree of head tube angle change. And the general geometry is fairly well rounded, with no real standout figures for a trail bike aside from a nice and short 432mm rear end and a low 340mm bottom bracket height. That keeps plenty of agility, meaning that you can pop and play about on the trail, but still plenty of rider integration to keep you nice and stable when things get fast. For the Trail 429, Pivot moved to a vertically mounted trunnion shock to deliver the 120mm of DW Link rear suspension. This allows for plenty of room in the front triangle to fit a large water bottle. You get Pivot's tool dock mount on the underside of the top tube, and there's also nice and low standover heights, meaning you get plenty of clearance out on the trail. This DW Link suspension is designed with efficiency at the forefront, but it still retains a nice and soft plush off the top feel to retain plenty of comfort and control. Pivot's cable port system is internal cable routing that enters through the head tube to the rear end, making it nice and easy to work on and also keeping rattles to a minimum. Pivot offers the Trail 429 in their three standard build specs, the Ride, the Pro and the Team, as well as their brunch ride configurations in both SRAM and Shimano offerings. These start at the $4,999 brunch ride spec, which still features Fox factory suspension, and go all the way up to the dripping $11,499 Team XX axis transmission build. Taking a look at our Trail 429 Pro, XT and XTR Trail and Enduro specs respectively, there's just a $200 price difference and a lot of the same components are shared, with the Trail build coming in at $8,699 and the Enduro coming in at $8,899. Where these two builds differ is in their suspension, their wheels and their tyre spec. Everything else is retained with a Shimano XT brake set, a mixture of XT and XTR drivetrain. You get a Fox factory Kashima dropper up there, and Pivot's alloy stem and low-rise carbon fibre bar. The drivetrain is a mixture of Shimano XT and XTR with a Raceface Affect R crankset. Taking a look at the suspension differences, and the Trail build gets a lighter weight Fox 34 130mm travel fork with a inline shock, whereas the Enduro build gets a Fox 36 in 140mm travel, 10mm up from the Trail build with a reservoir shock on there. This increased fork travel on the Enduro build certainly adds to the overall capability, slackening out the head angle and raising the front end and the bottom bracket a little, but it does impact the climbing performance slightly. Taking a look at the wheel spec differences, and on the Trail build you get a Reynolds 309/289 carbon fibre rim on Industry 9 Hydra hubs, whereas on the Enduro build you get the slightly burlier DT Swiss EX1501 with the 240 hubs and the 36T, so you get a much higher engagement on the Trail build and a slightly lighter weight overall, whereas the Enduro build is slightly more ready for punishment. And last but not least, the difference between our two bikes on test here is in the tyre spec. As standard, both of these come with Maxxis Dissected tyres and Exo casings, but for this test, we decided to go a little bit further and increase the kind of capability of the tyres on the Enduro build. So the trail build is fitted with a Maxxis DHR2 Exo Plus up front and a Dissector Exo in the rear, whereas the Enduro build gets a Maxxis DHF Exo Plus in the front and a DHR2 Exo Plus in the rear, just to add a little bit more capability. The result is a trail build that weighs in at 28.8 pounds, whereas the Enduro build weighs 2.3 pounds more at 31.1 pounds. And there's slight geometry differences in there, but the thing that matters is how they perform out on the trail. So let's hit the trail and see how they go. This is the Enduro build. And it's pretty damn sweet. It just lets you push that a little bit harder. Although for the mellower stuff, it's maybe not the ticket. You do just lose that little bit of rolling speed and efficiency. Once you start pushing it harder, it's a lot more fun. Travis, could you maybe tell us what the two bikes share? Tell us about the Trail 49 once you hit the trail.
The climbing position on both of these is very efficient, very sporty, puts you over the bars well. Yeah, and then for the descent, both still very capable, snappy descenders. They're not going to be great on the gnarliest of trails, but for the vast majority of trails that the average mountain biker rides, they're going to be plenty capable.
Certainly. And I think once you hit the trail on both of these, you do realize that the capability window is pretty wide. Like, there's a couple of times you end up getting carried away. The suspension, I think, for me, has plenty of reserves. Even for 120mm rear end, I feel like the DW Link kind of handles itself fairly well, can still take a fairly big hit. And then the whole chassis, I don't know if you would agree, but it all feels fairly stiff and stout, and you know, incredibly reassuring for a 28 and 31 pound build thereabouts. It's yeah, pretty impressive what Pivot's done with the construction, I think.
Yeah, and I think that the weight, you can definitely feel the weight between the bikes. Not to say that that one's sluggish by any means, but this being just a little over 28 pounds, especially once you get it into the air, you can really feel that this is a very light bike.
Absolutely. Then moving on to these two different builds. Obviously, you're on the kind of more trail cross-country focused build right now. What stands out to you? Where does this one shine?
This one definitely is going to shine in the pedaling efficiency. So it has the 130mm Fox 34. It ends up having half a degree less, half a degree steeper than the Enduro build that you're on. It puts you over the bars more. It's certainly not uncomfortable or too dramatically over the bars, but it does put you in that perfect position to feel like I can just cruise up the hill. And again, it's lightweight and it is just a very snappy, efficient climber.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stood out to me on this build is the lightweight wheels and tire combo really make it snappy off the line. Like you lose your speed in the technical section of climb. As soon as you stamp on the gas, you're back rolling again and moving really quickly. Whereas this, although it's still by no means a sluggish pedaler, you do just feel it takes a little bit more energy to get going back off the line.
Yeah, and especially with in the back here, it has the super high engaging Hydra hub, and just boom, it goes.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to this thing, and for me, the first standout was the steering precision. You know, as a heavier rider, both of us on the slightly heavier side, I found that with the 34 on the more Trail XC build, I could find just a little bit of vagueness in the steering at times, whereas moving into the 36, a 36 down at 140mm travel is a very stiff fork torsionally, and yeah, I really appreciated the kind of extra feeling of precision, and it lets you push that a little bit harder, for me at least.
Yeah, certainly. I always feel that on 34s, because I am a bit heavier, I can tend to feel a bit of flex, so I generally tend to always ride Fox 36s. And yeah, you can really feel that stiffness as you're hitting corners. It just gives you that tad bit more of confidence.
Definitely. And I think with the reservoir shock on the rear of this as well, the combination of those plus the slightly thicker casing tires overall, and maybe a slightly better damped wheel set, I guess would be a way to describe them. This bike just feels that little bit more planted through the rough stuff. You can just, you don't have to ride it quite as accurately through the finest of lines. You can just let it sort of roll through the slightly chunkier stuff, and it'll have your back. And it is just, for two bikes that are so similar apart from a few key components, I think it really is profound how much the difference is on the trail. Travis, you've been putting these through a couple of little laps to put them up head to head against the clock. Can you talk to us first, what did you do on these two bikes? You did a climbing stage and a descending stage, right? Can you describe those tracks?
I did. So yeah, the climbing stage, I tried to find something that was going to test the bike and not my poor climbing abilities. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I found something maybe 0.2 of a mile to 1/4 of a mile long, just kind of a nice gradual climb, nothing ridiculously steep, with just a little bit of technical rock section, nothing that I'm gonna have to stop and hop around or make any major movements, because I really wanted to see how much more efficient is one of these than the other. And then also on the descending, it was roughly 1/4 of a mile to 0.3 of a mile, somewhere in there. And top part was kind of rough and chunky, and then it came down through some tight trees, and then the trail just kind of smooths out into kind of a long, just straight away. So climbing on this bike, 1 minute and 37 seconds. Over here, the climb was 1 minute and 41 seconds.
So 4 seconds faster for the lighter weight trail build on the uphill.
Exactly.
And then the way down? Way
down is just pretty much the reverse. Over here on the Enduro build, 58 seconds. Over here, 1 minute and 1 second. So 3-second difference.
Okay, so if you're doing a loop of those two tracks back to back, then maybe that takes it by a second, but kind of splitting hairs at that point, I feel. And yeah, certainly they both have their strengths and their weaknesses. For your typical riding around bend with a mixture of your typical trail center stuff, maybe looking to, well, just whatever sits in your usual weekly routine, which of these two bikes are you picking?
Gosh, my normal go-to is I want to get on rowdier trails. And so, of course, I thought I was going to go with this bike, but I actually really like the efficiency of this. And, it's not going to be the same everywhere for everybody, but here in Bend, Oregon, the trails that we have, this is a great bike for it.
I kind of thought I would be the other way around. I have been, certainly recently, and especially on the flowier stuff, really enjoying a ultra lightweight and snappy bike. But yeah, for me, there's no getting around the fact that I can have that little bit more fun on the way down on this bike, and then that's the thing that really matters to me as a knee pad wearing, more downhill focused rider. So for me, it's going to be the Enduro build, but both are absolutely sweet builds, and certainly two bikes that I'd be happy to have in my garage.
Certainly.
Well, there we have it, the Pivot Trail 429 in the Trail Spec and the Enduro Spec, both absolutely fun ripper bikes that we've thoroughly enjoyed testing for this Dissected feature. A huge thanks to Pivot to supplying these two bikes to be tested and making this feature possible. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Give us a like if you have. Leave us a comment, let us know what your choice of these two bikes is. Are you a lightweight, agile trail ripper, or are you looking to push a limit on lighter Enduro style of things? Let us know. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome content and awesome bikes like the Pivot Trail 429. Thanks for watching. Catch you out on the trails.